Hello, my name is Eric Canada, and this is the login program video 2. In this video, I just wanted to talk about the code specifically. Well, I'll talk about all the code really, but first one I wanted to talk about specifically is the Python Flask app. This one pretty much is the heart and soul of the program. Usually, when you use a Flask app, it is, I think. But here, these are my declarations. I'm using, back-end communication. This one's for the database I'm using. This one's all for password security. Flask cores, import cores, it's just kind of some standard, so you can use functions from Flask cores. Import OS, basically more standard stuff. So communicate and open files, I think. It starts, we have an app called Flask, the name. The very first thing that it does is, if name is main, start the program. So create a database and run the app. So the very first thing after this is declared is database configuration. This is basically, I'm using a specific type of database. This is all from this here, but it's basically a common database for. It only has 3 variables. Here I made a class user model. Basically, I'm creating a class called user, and when I'm checking my user class, I'm inputting my DB model, which is database model. And then here are my primary keys: email, password, hash, for security. So after it does that, after it's done that, it says basically set the password, and then once the password's set, it generates a hash for the password. And then here it checks if the password associated with the database, if it's already there, and then it basically returns the results. This function, create a database, it's basically what it's doing here is it's saying that if that database doesn't exist, create it. And if it doesn't, if it already exists, don't do anything. That way that the program, can operate if something happens to the database, because for some reason, if the database is gone, it would just start over and make a new one. So down here, the last couple ones are these app routes. This one is the app route to my register page. This one is for the login page. So all these are basically doing is, if you watched my first video, you'd see how I create an account, and it has variables like what is your username, what's your password, and your email. So these are basically the routes that the messages take from the front end to the back end, and these are where they're declared. So the definition register, it's kind of, have our data, which would ultimately be our username, password, email. This is basically here, it's saying if the user inputs all of this information and the user is already in the database, then we won't add it to the database, and then it gives me a message: user already exists. So after that, after this, the statement is passed, we can now in the information in the database. Okay, so after it's been entered and checked, then it's actually passed into the database, and it's it ends with the database session dot commit. You see new user equals username equals username, email, new user, set password, and the database session add, database session commit. So here we're actually, the registration page, we're actually entering into the database here. And the app route, it just collects these fields that the user enters, which would be on the front end. Okay, now go to the login one. This is the same concept as the other route, but this one is the route login. And it starts with the definition login. The same concept as the other one. It collects, you know, your username and password that you would sign in as, and then it sends it through checks. After it gets this information, the username and password, it checks the user class, and we're using functions here from the database, from the SQL, from this, actually, however you pronounce that. So we're getting the messages, and then we're checking them with functions of them. First check, and then so we're checking to see if a username matches up. And after we find a match of the username, then we try to match the password. If the password isn't right, it'll say invalid username or password. If it is right, it says login success. So that's basically how the Python is running the project. Everything else is just, some web page and a PWA. So all it does is just, after you log in, it transitions into the home page, and then if you don't, then you get the access denied page. Also, for a little clarification here, the GitHub here, it's about 23% Python, 50% JavaScript, 17% CS Cascade styling cheat, and then 9% HTML. So that's why I really just wanted to touch on the Python portion of it. I hope that was helpful. See you guys. Take care.